Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of The Cosmic Force. My name is Tyler Reganti, and on tonight's show, we go all the way back to where it started. I'm talking 1977. Marvel Comics published a comic for a yet-to-be-released Star Wars, or to-be-released sci-fi movie, and it continues to change our lives more than 40 years later. That's why you guys are all here. So welcome to the Cosmic Force. And before we get into that, let me go ahead and introduce the rest of my team here tonight. And that is going to start with Emma, who's got some extra duties tonight in addition to hosting. She's our producer tonight. So Emma, how's it going over there in the hot seat tonight?
Hello, I am not stressed at all. It is fine. No, really, I'm doing well. I hope this stream doesn't look too bad for you guys. It's a little choppy, and I'm not sure why. I've been messing with settings for like 30 minutes, but you know what? You can hear us, and that's the point. It's a podcast, and we've got some really fun stuff for you guys tonight, so I hope you enjoy.
We are really excited, and I know that it's going to be an awesome night tonight. And Caleb, no cape tonight, Caleb, but we are we do have both the two flags in the background there. How
exactly? I'm good. I'm taking a slight little break here, even though I might be on break next week. We'll see. But we're having a good time here. I'm ready to talk about some old comics here. It's exciting. I'm ready to get into this, and we have one more kind of special guest here. So Tyler, why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, we have another special guest who is joining us, virtually, sort of. We couldn't go back to 1977 and talk about the history of this book without our own Youtini's own historian, the keeper of the sacred timeline, Trevor Daly. He will join us. He and I shot a little video earlier today to get some of his comments on this title, and we're gonna put that in the show through different parts, and we'll talk about that. We're really excited to have him be a part of the show. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, we're going to start where we always do with our weekly pull list. And Emma, since you are running as producer tonight, that means you have the task of telling everybody what is in their local comic stores this week.
That's right. We've got some really, really awesome stuff this week. So, starting us off, we have Star Wars Darth Vader number 14 called The Blade Behind the Curtain, written by Greg Pak, with pencils by Raphael Yanko, cover by Aaron Cooter and Richard Isanove, colors by Jason Keith, and letters by Joe Caramanga. This was a really, really cool issue today, and I highly recommend you read it. All these tie-ins with War of the Bounty Hunters, always so good. So next up, we have another War of the Bounty Hunters tie-in with Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters Jabba the Hutt number 1 called Trust Issues, written by Justina Ireland. That's right, the High Republic's very own Justina Ireland. Her first Marvel comic, she said on Twitter. The art is by Abraham Roberson, and Luca Pizzari. The cover is by Mahmoud Asrar and Matthew Wilson. Colors by Edgar Delgado and Giada Marchisio. And letters by Ariana Maher. And last up, we've got some High Republic action today. We've got Star Wars The High Republic Adventures number 6. It's called Mission to Bilbosa Part 1, written, as always, by Daniel Jose Older. Art by Harvey Tolibau and Pau Rodrigues. A cover by Harvey Tolibau, colors by Rebecca Nalty, and letters by Jake Wood. And as always, all of the links to all 3 of these comics, the Comixology affiliate links, are in the description below. So if you don't have any of these, I know this morning I totally forgot that Jabba the Hutt number 1 was coming out, and it didn't catch up with my subscription because it's counted as like a separate thing from War of the Bounty Hunters. So I was like, oh, I forgot. So then I went on Youtini, found the affiliate link, and bam, there we go. So if you want to do that, they're all in the description below.
I was going to comment. I was excited about reading Jabba the Hutt because this was the first one shot that we've had for War of the Bounty Hunters. So
yeah, it was very good. I thought
good. That's good to hear because I haven't made my way to my comic store yet. So I haven't read any of these yet. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I hope that Justina Ireland can write some High Republic comics. I really liked her writing style here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm a big fan of her work, and I didn't get. She wrote the middle grade from Wave 1, correct?
That's correct.
For the High Republic.
Yes, for the High Republic, and then in the second wave, she's doing the young adults, Out of the Shadows, which I'm pretty sure that comes out next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it all blurs together sometimes.
It does.
There's a lot
for a Star Wars book company.
So maybe after Daniel Jose Older's series, then we'll get hers.
I hope so.
That'd be cool.
I mean, they're killing it. So the more that they can the more that they can publish, the more that we can support them, the more content we will have. So make sure you support all of the Star Wars artists and creators, and especially this High Republic stuff because it's amazing content. So that's going to lead us into our next segment, which is what we're loving. And my art of the week is going to come from it's a common thread here on the Cosmic Force. It's another Darth Vader looking awesome shot. This one is from Star Wars Mainline 2015. This is from issue 2. Penciler and inker are John Cassaday, and the colorist is Laura Martin. I really wanted to pick a photo of Luke because I really like the way that Luke is portrayed in this early or in this run. And then I turned the page to this, and it was just like, how can you not? I mean, Darth Vader with smoke and 4 stormtroopers on speeder bikes. I mean, that's just you just gotta share that off. So
that was great. Now I do really love it because I think in that series they had Luke in his yellow jacket.
Yes,
and that's a look that is highly underrated. It
really is.
That we need. I don't even know if they have an action figure for that one.
I'm not sure. I'm sure some of our fellow staff members will be able to clue us in on that. If you're in the chat, let us know because we are not as well versed on the toys. I feel like there should be. I don't know if there is, but I feel like there should be. So, Emma, what's your art of the week this week?
Yeah, so I've got art from Lando Double or Nothing, issue number 1. This art is by Paolo Villanelli, and holy smokes, you guys, this is amazing. You've got the stars going by and the TIE fighter exploding and all the laser fire and all that. Oh my gosh. It's gorgeous. It looks like a piece of Star Wars art that you'd hang up on your wall. Just an absolutely incredible splash page. And honestly, I love seeing that brand new Falcon, the Lando's version of the Falcon. I always hope to see more of it, and when we do, I seriously love it. So good.
The Falcon that's still under warranty.
That's right. That's right. The one that still has a bar
without all the modifications.
Right. The one that doesn't have compartments in the floors, and it's all nice and clean.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love this art. It's very stunning.
Exactly. Catching up on some Orlando after our roundtable last week.
Of course, I couldn't get enough of him.
Exactly. I did not enjoy that series as much as the previous one, but
I agree.
Maybe one of these years we'll get around to talking about it. My art of the week also comes from Star Wars 2015. This one, instead of being issue 2, it's issue 62. This one is art by Andrea Barcado. It shows a group of playwrights going on, some actors putting on a play about the siege of Mon Cala, which might be a source we also talk about a little bit later. So they're kind of talking about the heroic rebels who've come in, and if you can see, it actually has Luke and Leia and Han in like their original like concept art sort of thing. And that was a really brilliant nod. I loved seeing that. I'm like, I got that reference. And you can see he has lightsabers attached to his belt with a cord and really cool things like that. So not only was it a fun character moment, it was also like it's a great moment for those who are in the know and who caught that reference. It was really great.
Yeah, even the pose is like not only the costumes like right out of McQuarrie's concept art, but even that pose is. I mean, I've seen that. I as soon as I saw that, I turned around because I actually have my version of the Star Wars up on my shelf behind me. That looks awesome.
Absolutely. So no, when I saw that, I'm like, I have to show this off. Speaking of showing off, we got a community art. Let's see here. Oh, I lost my discard. Who was it that in this one that comes from Droids? There's a little bit of discussion as if we would actually allow comics arts. This is from Moonflyer, aka Dave, on our Discord, and he was wondering if we could actually do covers. And I think the answer is yes. We can do covers. They look good.
When it's a cover that looks like this, I mean, how can you say no to this?
Exactly. This has the killer protocol droid. Who was that? Oh goodness. Oh, C3PX. Really kind of. I remember like reading about a stat block for him and what might be like the Star Wars RPG sort of things, and really being fascinated by protocol droid gone evil. It's almost like now we've seen more protocol droids gone evil than protocol droids gone just normal, but it's still a cool look. Have to catch up on this droid series one of these decades.
Is that 2 weeks in a row for Moonflyer?
I think so. Let's see if we can get a triple play from him. See if you can keep that up.
So the rest of you guys in the community, let's throw in your submissions into the Discord or tweet at us at Cosmic. Tweet us at Twitter, and let's get some competition in there because Moonflyer's been killing it last 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's move on to what we're checking in. Tyler, anything else yet you've been reading that's interesting?
Nothing much to report on. All the current books. I will say that I am starting to read Star Wars 2015. I have the trade paperback around here somewhere. I picked up the first trade paperback last week. And I may or may not be doing some research on a future show. Not going to go into much more details than that. But it's I don't think it's a coincidence that I'm reading it and Caleb had mentioned that he's reading it as well. So Emma, what are you reading this week?
I've been reading some Star Wars 1977, of course, and the 3 new issues today. Really just some solid releases today. I mean, it's kind of rare that we get 3 new releases, and then for all 3 to be very solid is like ultra rare. So it was quite a treat this morning to just dive into these three and really have a good time. Yeah, I've had kind of a busy week, so that's about all I've had time for. But I'm looking forward to our conversation about these the 1977 series for sure. Caleb, what about you?
Nothing crazy. I said, we were doing a little bit of pre-show about, there's 107 issues for this series, for this mainline series, and we were kind of like, okay, well, how far did you actually get through this? I think I managed to get the farthest through. Like,
I think you did.
Yeah, I got 25 issues into this, and it's some really good reading. I was kind of rushing through it a little bit at the end, but that's kind of where all my energy went to. And the problem is I've gotten so much steam in this, I kind of want to push through and get all of it read. I don't know if I'll be able to, but we'll see what happens. See what our things we have down the docket here.
All right. Well, we are going, for those of you joining us live, we are going to go to a quick merch ad. And then when we come back, let's talk about the original, where it all started, Marvel Comics in 1977, Star Wars. We'll be back in just a second. All right. So our main topic tonight is like I said, the original run of Star Wars, and we kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit. We had a little bit of we knew we wanted to cover this, but we had a little bit of a challenge of figuring out exactly how we wanted to cover it. And that's because, as Caleb alluded to earlier, there's 107 issues in this book, running all the way from 1977 to 1986. The first issue actually released prior to the launch of the movie. The first issue 1 actually released on April 12th, 1977, and the movie came out May 25th, 1977. So we kind of decided, you know what, let's take kind of an overview. Let's give you some highlights, give you some fun facts, mention some characters that are notable, maybe their first appearances, maybe they've come back, maybe they haven't yet, and then kind of talk about a little bit of some of the interesting storylines and plots that have come into the book. So before we really dive into it, I want to go around and talk to each of you, and then we'll pitch it to Trevor. What are your thoughts, like of what you've read and what you've seen and researched so far? I'm going to start with Emma. What's your just general overall thoughts on this story?
Yeah, so for me, it was extremely interesting to sort of see the movie adaptation, especially of A New Hope. I was only able to read the first 8 issues just for reference, and the aesthetic of this series honestly was just the most interesting and kind of craziest part for me. And I it's weird because I mean, Han Solo, he doesn't really look like Harrison Ford. Luke doesn't really look like Mark Hamill. They did Leia pretty good, I'd say.
Which one of you called him He-Man in the pre-show?
I did. Like there's as the art goes on, and like I was just kind of looking at some of the covers in later issues, like they become a little bit more like bowlerized, a little bit more stylized, and like boy howdy does Luke turn into He-Man in the last couple of issues.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's a very like He-Man vibe. You're so right. So yeah, I think the story was good. The adaptation part of it, I only got to 2 original stories, and of course Jackson was introduced, so we get some really cool characters from this series, and overall it's just very interesting to see how comics have changed between today and then, and especially with Star Wars lore and all of the different things that sort of come with an increase in stories.
Caleb, what are some of your quick thoughts?
You can absolutely tell that this was written in the 70s. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not necessarily not just saying like, oh, it's old, but like the tropes that they are using outside of like when they have to like make things up, boy, is it like really like 70s, 60s sci-fi sort of, things. Like Star Wars has an aesthetic now. Like we can look at something and say, that is in the Star Wars universe right now. But like there's stuff like, oh boy, I got into gladiatorial sort of thing. I got to use my power shield and my power mace, and they glow with radioactive energy. I'm like, boy, that would never fly in this sort of in this day and age. Like the weird like way that they talk about technologies, and I have a couple like random notes here. And like one of the interesting things is, and this might be getting a little bit into the weeds here, but in the early issues, they start talking about like, well, if time flowed in space like it does here, this would be like 2 hours later. Like they can't do like, I don't know if time dilation, if Lucas wants us to have time dilation or not. So we'll just kind of make minor mention of it, things like that. It kind of helps to show how easily Star Wars could have been another generic sci-fi sort of saga, but it had something else behind it. So the stories did a good job of being very entertaining, but you could easily tell how it could have been the movie could have been a campy cheese fest.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I read the least because as those of you that are listening, that have listened to all of our shows, but know that I'm a physical guy. I have all my comics. I've got all my trade paperbacks behind me. And that's what made this project a little tough, because these books are not very easy to find. I mean, luckily, I've got these are the Dark Horse versions, but these are the Dark Horse versions of the reprints of the Marvel original prints for each of the movies. And the only reason I have these is because these were actually a wedding gift from my mother to me on my wedding day. So I've had those for 13 years, and that's really my only ability to read this, because I don't have Comixology or Marvel Unlimited, and that's something, and I think that we're going to talk about this more as the show goes on, that doing this project and researching this title, there's so much fun that I want to read, that it, like, I have not thought more seriously about getting a digital collection than I have in the last week, because of some of the outlandish stories and just amazing things that are covered in this book. And some of those things that are, Trevor had mentioned in my discussion with him earlier today. So, Emma, why don't we go ahead and run Trevor's first clip, and then we'll come back in a few minutes.
All right, here we go.
All right. Well, we have a special guest with us today, Trevor, our own Youtini's own keeper of the sacred timeline. Trevor, how you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Not a problem at all, man. Not a problem at all. Happy to be on the Cosmic Force.
Yes. Yeah. When we talked about having this as a discussion, that you're talking about the original Star Wars, when we kind of had to have you, we thought we have to have Trevor on. So I want to go ahead and dive right into it. And, this was a very important run. I want to know, first off, before we get into it, what are your personal experiences with this run, and what have you read? What, and sort of what was your experience with this book?
I mean, I've read all of it many, many times. I think they were hard to get when I was a kid. And when Dark Horse re-released them in the 90s, there was like a 7-volume set of graphic novels. It just brought me back to being a kid. And I've looked since at how old I was when these issues came out. And it's all the sort of pre-Return of the Jedi story arc. So I was born in 76. So I would have been like 6. Getting these comics, and some of them were read over and over again by me as a kid. So there's certain stories towards the later end of that run that are just they helped mold me into the massive Star Wars nerd that I am today.
Right. And you know, I was also finding something that was interesting while I was doing some research on this. There was a someone who worked at Marvel Comics. I can't remember what his position is, but he actually said that many who worked at Marvel in 1977 consider the Star Wars run to have single-handedly saved the company from financial ruin, because comics weren't as big back then. There was a delay between publishing and actual street dates and actual. Do you remember the effect that it had on maybe you and your friends?
I mean, I think that's a well-documented fact, is that, Marvel were going downhill fast. And, having the Star Wars run did single-handedly save that company from going bankrupt, regardless of Spider-Man and X-Men and all of that sort of stuff. They were struggling. And that was the power of Star Wars at the time. And even for myself, obviously, I'm in the UK. We didn't have the monthly Marvel issues. We had a weekly Star Wars comic that actually had extra stories written for it, but weren't in the US one. And that actually became an opportunity for Marvel to promote their own comics over here. So you'd have a backup Spider-Man story in the Star Wars weekly comic. So they really did use the appeal of Star Wars to introduce their own characters again, whilst they were, on a resurgence as a company.
All right, so thank you, Trev, for that. He's gonna return later on. So I've got some fun facts here in the universe and in the comics as well. So here we go. First up, the series was such a smash hit for Marvel in an otherwise dismal sales year, despite having like Spider-Man and other superheroes like that. Many who worked at Marvel in 1977 consider it to have single-handedly saved Marvel, the company, from financial ruin, according to Jim Shooter, who was Marvel's editor-in-chief in '78.
Yeah, that was something that I was able to find, and Trevor and I had kind of talked about that a little bit. I try to keep these clips short, but apparently the reason that they were in such financial ruin was because it was very delayed to be able to get figures and financial figures back then, because comic shops weren't around as much as they are today. So Marvel would have to ship them like imagine a magazine. For some of you younger listeners, what you used to have to order magazines through the mail, and they would just come to you once a month, but the material would be sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks old. So in this day and age of instant gratification, instant news, it's hard to fathom that. But that was the delay back then, was they would publish it and they would ship it, and then they'd have to wait 2 or 3 weeks before it would hit the shelves, and then they'd hit the shelves, and then have to wait to get the sales figures back. So it was a very delayed process, and I just thought it was really fascinating, and for something that was new, and hadn't really, these first issues were out before the movie came out. For it to have that kind of success is just, it's amazing to me to think that the creative genius that is George Lucas, that he was able to use some of this to turn it into what we all know and love today. It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating because I didn't, if you look into the story, it's like no one knew Star Wars was going to be such a massive smash hit, and for them to greenlight production of a comic series before it even hit movie theaters must have been like a really wild thing. I kind of want to go back and see, was Marvel also like rolling dice on like random things? Did they try to make like an E.T. comic book series or what was the year when that came out? Then it was the the Steven Spielberg one.
Well, yeah, you've got a couple. You've got Never Ending Story.
No. He made a sci-fi movie at the same time. I think, Lucas and Spielberg like bet each other, like, they both thought the Air one would be a smash hit. So they like bet each other, like, whoever has the bigger one, each one has to give each other like 5% of each one's movie rights. So that's what made Spielberg like kind of sit pretty in the 80s and 90s and do whatever he wanted.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it's just crazy that, like, because when you think of Marvel today, you think of like this gigantic multi-million-dollar company.
Right.
And to think that Star Wars saved them, That's pretty
Mhm.
nuts. That's pretty nuts.
With as deep of a
Mm.
bench as Marvel had, yeah, this new up and coming sci-fi fantasy story. It's like I said, I wish there was more. I really want to get into kind of a behind the scenes sort of documentary about that because it's so fascinating.
Uh,
Emma, you
Close
got a couple.
Encounter, real quick. It was Close Encounters of the Third
That's right.
Kind.
That's right.
Yeah, got you. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Emma, you've got a couple more interesting fun facts and history about this book.
Yeah, for sure. So, according to Ryder Windham, the comic wasn't acknowledged by Lucasfilm while planning new stories because little story control had been enforced during its creation. So there wasn't like a story group type of thing going on back then. Marvel's contract specified that they couldn't do anything big with the characters until George Lucas had worked out what to do next and told them. So, after the 6-issue adaptation of the original movie had wrapped, writer Roy Thomas and artist Howard Chaykin decided to take things in a new direction by going with one-off stories or simple short arcs. They began by taking the basic story of Seven Samurai, which is the most famous film of Lucas's idol Akira Kurosawa, and making it a Han Solo and Chewbacca story that spread over issues 7 and 8, titled New Planets, New Perils, and 8 for Aduba 3, respectively. And yes, that's the story that introduced Jackson along with Don Juan Quixote, a crazy
love
old
that.
man who
I
thinks
love
he's a
that
Jedi.
And for those of you who don't know, this is Don Juan, spelled like Obi-Wan, W-A-N, Quixote, K-I-H-O-T-A-Y. And as we all know what that reference is, but it is such a Star Wars name, and I love it, and I want to know more about this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when I read that, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And then I worked it out in my head. I was like, okay, yeah, I understand now.
It's the man of La Mancha. So yeah, the kind of is it weird to call him super clever and creative for stealing off one of the most famous literary characters of all kind? Probably not. I think it's pretty clever.
I feel like there's a saying out there that says creators don't create new things; they just adapt old things. There's some sort of saying out there that comments on that.
Yeah, the most the quickest way to become a very creative and successful writer is to hide all of your sources. just delete them. Try to get rid of them.
Oh man.
Yeah, but between the Kurosawa influence and the Flash Gordon influences, there was a lot of really interesting stories that came out of those one-offs. And I thought it was actually it was interesting that when I saw this next bullet point in here, Emma, that I wonder why this didn't stick.
Yeah, I agree. So this is very interesting. So Luke, Leia, and the rest of our band of heroes were called the Star Warriors. And I really like that. I think it's cool. That's
the first thing I wrote on my notes is Star Warriors. Great name.
Yeah.
Why didn't they keep on with that branding? It's the Star Warriors. I mean, it's amazing. That could have been the title is Star Wars or the Star Warriors.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and then I wonder, in the future, would we have to call our newer characters Star Warriors as well? In the future, if we kept that moniker, would Jyn Erso be a Star Warrior? I don't know. I kind of wonder.
I think they would be. I think it would go all the way down to Rey and Poe and Finn. I think they're all Star Warriors.
Oh, I love that.
It's a little heavy-handed in this day of social. I don't imagine that going over well on social media. I'm just going to throw that out there. Star Wars Twitter, I feel would have a field day, not in a good way, if that moniker stuck around.
Yeah, isn't that every day on Star Wars Twitter though?
that's very true. That's very true.
Star Warriors, come out and play. It's the only thing I know about that movie.
All right, so the last fact I've got here is on May 29th, 2019, Marvel released a special 108th issue of the series that continues the storyline that began in Star Wars 50. So, oh my goodness, talk about a late release there. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I was
I thought waiting for Duke Nukem Forever took a while.
Yeah, right, right. And I don't there might be a relevance, but I don't see a relevant date around that. Like 2019 compared to 1977 or May 29th compared to the original launch. And like I don't it's just a strange decision with a strange timing and a strange date. You know what? I mean, go for it. I mean, more power to you. I'd love to see more of this stuff come forward, but I'm wondering if there's a significance behind that I just couldn't find.
Yeah, like I guess they decide to. I don't know if they had to like for like this sounds like super cynical, but I wonder if they had to do something to keep like the trademark or something alive and like release something so they still had
Yeah. Stranger things have happened like that in the comic book industry, and if you don't know about that, look. I not now during this show, but I encourage you to go research the history of Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel.
Ooh, yeah,
that is a fascinating tale of DC against Marvel. But yeah, that's a very interesting perspective, Caleb. I again, I'd like to know why that decision was made. So in addition to those fun facts, we've talked about Jackson. We talked about my favorite character, Don Juan Quixote. But there were a couple of other very interesting characters. Some we've known, and some we haven't known. Some were original. And I'm going to let Emma. Why don't we go ahead and play the next clip from Trevor, where he talks about some of his favorite characters. And gosh, this is where it starts getting weird, guys.
That doesn't surprise me with Trev. So yeah, here we go. Tossing it to Trev.
And it's amazing to see the resurgence of these characters. Valance is in his own comic book. You've got Jackson, who seems to be on a Cavan's on a mission to bring him back to relevance. And it's amazing to see some of these characters kind of getting their due diligence now that Star Wars is back in the mainstream again.
Absolutely, and it's because these authors were reading these comics as kids. It's not because they trawled through these as authors and went, right, I need to pick something obscure. They've all picked on something that they related to when they first read those comics as youngsters.
So let's focus on some of the characters. I was surprised at some of the characters that I saw, like Admiral Yularen is actually featured in issue 1, and that's a character that I didn't know until the Clone Wars. But what are some of your favorite characters? Maybe not necessarily some of the ones that we know, obviously Luke and Leia, but what is we all know Jackson, we all love Jackson. But what are some of the other characters that you remember that might not be that might be a little bit more obscure, that really left a mark on you?
Okay, so there's one who I will always have a soft spot for, and I'm praying that they get recanonized, and that is Pliff the Hoojib. So these are tiny little telepathic creatures that eat energy, and the rebels make a base on their planet.
Yes.
They accidentally get attacked because they're hungry. But even outside of the comics, there was, back when I was a kid, you had these read-along books with a cassette. So they actually adapted one of these issues into that. So I could still hear Pliff's voice in my head. And they've introduced so much stuff like Jackson and Shira Bree, obviously, who became Lemire in the Legacy of the Force series, started with Marvel Comics. But I would love to see Pliff and the Hoojibs return into canon. There's crazier things out there.
All right, so we are back, and man, Pliff the Hoojib, that is quite the deep cut, Trev. And I didn't get that far in the comics, but I think I'm gonna need to read those issues tonight just to figure out like what he's talking about. Something about crazy like eating people. Like
before we go to Caleb to talk about some other characters, I pulled this up.
Oh, that's what I was talking about.
So let me see where this. A forest planet full of energy-emitting geothermal rods in caves and Hoojibs, a race of Muppet bunnies who only communicate telepathically and wind up becoming important to the Alliance as spies. I mean,
bunnies. They had a thing
on.
for bunnies in this.
No, yeah,
thing.
because when listeners in the pre-show, I was kind of thumbing through the cover art and all the issues there. And one of the last issues, it has a bunch of characters being attacked by what I thought was a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, with lots of little white rabbits jumping around and attacking and going for the throat. So I had to show it off to everyone. So no, those are the Hujabs. Those are the energy eating telepathic bunnies.
And by the way, now we have Jared in the chat saying, "Oh, we're talking about the Hoojibs," and I think that's his new summoning word. We had legends, now we've got Hoojibs.
If we talk about anything prior to 1995, I think it automatically gives Jared a heads up.
For sure. So, Caleb, I think you've got some cool character appearances for us.
Absolutely, yeah. So we already talked about Emerald Wolf Yularen. He's kind of like this weird. He shows up in almost kind of a minor player in Legends, and now also a minor player in canon. It's kind of weird that so many people are attaching to this character and making big stories about him. Like, he shows up not only in the new Thrawn books, but
that's
yeah, he showed up there. He shows up in the Clone Wars series and the Rebel series. Kind of is this weird competent Imperial commander, which is a kind of a rare thing, to be honest.
Well, that was, I mean, like I said, I knew him from the Clone Wars show. And he's one of the people that I feel like Anakin respected in the I don't want to call it the Imperial Navy, but in the Republic Navy. And so to see him continuing to pop up and to realize that he had a history this rich is just kind of one of those wow, I never even knew that.
Mm-hmm. We got a couple of our characters. This is a typo here in the notes. It's Mom Mothra. But that's honest. I mean, it's about
what happens when you type notes during the workday.
Well, okay, but let's face it, Mon Mothra is essentially Mom Mothra. She's kind of the queen leader of the entire rebellion there. I could totally see her putting juice boxes together for all the commandos.
That image is great in my head.
Exactly.
Now.
Yeah, but yeah, was she ever actually given that title in her name in the original movie?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think we learned that until maybe some expanded universe stuff. It's Chancellor, right?
I think something like that, or at least Senator Mon Moth. No, it's Senator. But
right.
But we don't even know her name, so this is probably the first time we actually realize who she is and who her what her character is, and that she is actually kind of an important person.
Yeah, she was just the deadly serious redheaded woman that just felt so bad for the Bothans, as all we knew her as.
Right,
pretty much, and that was not until this third episode. Until then, she was just kind of, she's that leader who has a few lines. Let's see here. We also had a couple other characters I just want to put this in here. Chewbacca is very different in this series.
Yeah, that was the number one thing that kind of blew me away while I was reading this. He seemed, well, first of all, his aesthetic is very different.
He is way more gorilla-like.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe it. He's more violent, and just not as likable as the Chewbacca that we know and love today. And part of me wonders if that was just a production thing. When they were adapting the movies, did they think that Chewbacca was a scary monster, or did they? Yeah, here we go. Tyler's got. Let me show off Tyler here really quickly. He's holding up,
trying to not get the glare in there.
Yeah, so he's kind of chunky, and he's kind of fierce looking. He's got that scowl on his face, and yeah, thank you, Tyler, for showing that. He definitely gave off a different vibe than the Chewie that we knew and know today. Yeah.
No, they definitely played up the fact that he's an alien sort of thing. We also got a couple other characters, we actually introduced Biggs a lot more recently into I think he shows up in the very first issue. His Luke's childhood friend. Then we also have a little bit more of Wedge, who would go on to lead Rogue Squadron. A couple minor characters that we get to see named and have a little bit more development, and that's always fun. Here's the big thing: is that we have Barrett Valance, the droid, the half droid, or as they call it, Borg bounty hunter.
I like how they call it Borg.
Yeah, it's great. Like, predates Next Generation at all, so don't come at me with that. But when I was reading this, and I like the very first issue that Barrett shows up, they splash page, they blowing up a thing and says Barrett and his angry group of bounty hunters. I'm like, well, hold on. So I had to look this up. That issue number 16 came out in October of 1978. Now Boba Fett, his very first appearance was in this Christmas special, which was in November of 78. So Barrett Valance is Star Wars' oldest bounty hunter. He was there a whole month before Boba Fett even put it onto screens. So next time when someone says Boba Fett is the first bounty hunter ever conceived for Star Wars, they are unaware.
Yes, you can tell them you're wrong, and you heard it from the Cosmic Force.
You can tell them Caleb sent you. Don't at me. All right. So yeah, no, that was like a kind of a fun, fascinating sort of thing of them making more characters. We also got a few other things. This was a fun little story where we get to see Bail Organa in the flesh in episode 24. That was fun because you get to see, it's kind of like a prequel sort of thing where you got to see him being helped out by Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of in his prime. He still looks like an old man, but it's like, 10, 20 years before. So you gotta see like Obi-Wan and old Ben as like a Jedi Knight and like how they imagined Jedi would look in that sort of thing. And again, it's very space opera. He has like a full black jumpsuit with like silver armbands. So kind of like a different look of what maybe what you might have very first thought when you thought what a Jedi Knight, a space knight would be. Definitely not brown robes and, and tunics.
Interesting.
Lando made an appearance in issue 43, and then of course we have everyone's favorite Jackson, the green space rabbit who likes to eat meat and kick enemies. Really,
Can I say something that I noticed about Jackson? So he always says that he doesn't like to be called a rabbit, right?
Yes.
But his ship's name is the Rabbit's Foot. So what's that all about?
I feel wasn't that addressed in from a certain point of view, The Empire Strikes Back?
It?
I know that there was
since I've read that.
I know that there was a story in there about Jackson going to Cloud City to meet Lando, and I feel like Lando makes that exact comment to him about it's called the Rabbit's Foot. Don't quote me on this, but I'll go double check. But I feel like there was a tongue-in-cheek sort of reference or comment, mental commentary in that story, and from a certain point of view.
Yeah, no, that sounds very familiar. But that was one of the first things I thought about. Like this doesn't really add up, but okay, I'll accept it. He's a cool enough character.
Like put kind of a little lampshading there, but like that was the sort of thing that they liked doing, is like these weird, crazy sort of like space characters and wacky sort of almost Looney Tunes sort of aspect they went through. I don't think they ever went quite as far as Jackson and the rest of the series from what I read. They did introduce psychic space bunnies, so there's that. But in the next couple issues, they definitely slow things down a little bit. But in the same time we get Jackson, we also get Don Juan Quixote, Tyler's favorite character from the extended universe. And I think, as we have gotten Jackson pulled over into the canon timeline, I think we need some Don Juan in the extended timeline. Yeah. I think he needs to have his time in the spotlight again.
There's just that's yeah. I mean, there's if Jackson can be revived, Don Juan can also be revived. So
yeah, I mean, like how like Jar Jar Binks comes back as a clown in one of the Aftermath books. We could make like an Obi-Wan Kenobi impersonator, like a street performance, and it's Don Juan Quixote.
Yeah,
that's my vote.
I am totally down for having that name come back as a tongue-in-cheek like clown character, or it doesn't have to be a Jedi. I just want to see that name brought back so that everybody who's reading Star Wars now can see this name and can appreciate it, because that's all I really want.
For sure.
Exactly.
Give the last what they want.
And that's what we want, and we're the people. Some of our last minute things is we got the character Luminera, who first appeared in these comics, who didn't came through like the rest of the book series. I think she's the Dark Force wielder who uses the light whip, right?
Yeah, I remember Star Wars Archives talking about Lumaya.
Lumaya.
And it sounds familiar that she's like kind of. I haven't read any books with her in it, but I'm pretty sure I remember them saying something about her being like in a relationship with Luke and like being a Dark Force wielder.
Everyone was in a relationship with
Luke. In Legends.
That doesn't narrow it down at all.
Fair enough.
But she had like a turban on, like this weird like triangular headpiece sort of thing.
Oh, interesting.
She was heavily featured in the Legacy of the Force series, which comes at the tail end of the timeline of the novels, at least. And so I don't remember very many specifics about her. I do remember I enjoyed Legacy of the Force, but there are some. I don't entirely remember all of her details, but yeah, it's fun to see. We included that in the notes just because as we're talking about Jackson coming back, and as I'm joking about wanting to see the name Don Juan Quixote come back, there has some elements that were from these original comics that have been brought forward, and obviously Legacy of the Force is still gone the way of Legends, but it's happened once before, and you never know, things can happen again.
For sure.
These, it wouldn't be Star Wars without some crazy stories, and our friends at Legends Look Back knows a thing or two about some crazy stories, because Legends can get kind of crazy. But there are a couple of notable stories that when I was doing some research that are out there. But let's head back over to Trevor. Let's hear what he was saying about some of his favorite stories from this run. Let's go ahead and talk about the storylines, because I personally haven't read these because my collection is physical, so it's a little harder for me to get some of these. But I was doing some research, and there are some crazy storylines that happen in this book. What are some of your favorite storylines that you remember from this 107 issue run?
Yeah, you're right. It does go crazy. There are some absolutely nuts storylines in there. But for me, the very first arc after the New Hope adaptation, so starting with issue 7 up to issue 15, you've got the 8 from Aduba 6 series that I rave about all the time, that introduced Jackson to us. You've got Day of the Dragon Lords in there. Yep. The Day of the Dragon Lords issue in that arc is amazing as well. Valance is introduced in issue 16, so straight away in the first handful of issues where they branch it on their own, they introduce characters and plots that we're still talking about now.
Right.
You can break the whole 107 issues down into like a couple of arcs based on the writers, because there were some really massive writers. So Archie Goodwin sort of did the first third. Chris Claremont, who went on to write Uncanny X-Men, he did a few issues. And then there was a couple of other writers. So David Michelin, he took over sort of around issue 50, and his issues covering the post-Empire Strikes Back era, they're really, really weird. That's kind of the weird section of the arc. And then once you hit sort of issue 80, I think it's Mary Jo Duffy, I forget off the top of my head. She takes over, and it becomes much more serialized again as you get the Hunt for Solo, the post Return of the Jedi arcs, and there's some really, really strong stories in that sort of last third of a series.
All right, and we're back live, and it was this part of both my interview with Trevor and in doing my own research that I really got excited about this. And this was when I mentioned earlier that I was really disappointed that I didn't have this direct access to this. It was these storylines, because they would never make it in today's canon, but they are so interesting. I mean, the storyline that Trevor was talking about was featured in issues 51 and 52. The arc was to take the Tarkin, and the new super weapon is a world killer dubbed the Tarkin, fittingly enough. But what I found interesting is it wasn't a weapon of Vader's. It was built by the Imperials who had broken off from the Empire because they fundamentally disagreed with the tactics of Darth Vader. So not only do we have ambitious Imperials having to face the rebels, they also have to devise a plan to assassinate Vader, creating a story that is just that is fascinating to me, and it's those levels of freedom that makes me really want to go back and kind of see how they pulled it off and really how it ends.
Exactly. Like, I've read several times the first like major arc, the Star Hoppers of Abdullah.
Yes.
I think it's like 6 or Abdullah 3. It's like Seven Samurai is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. So even when you see a cheap knockoff of it, it's still great.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, that's one thing I didn't quite touch on in the character section. Han Solo, I know I like to joke about it, you know, in the mainline series, but Han Solo's super competent in this series. He's really good at his job, and it's kind of wild to see him being being able to wipe his own butt, for lack of a better term. Like, you know, he like single-handedly gathers like this like group of like, you know, gun-toting, you know, space rangers together and star hoppers, and like fends off an entire like attack of bandits, and then stops a giant, you know, biological super weapon, you know, lizard thing from destroying the village. Like, it's like, oh wow, he's good at his job. Wow.
How can you not be interested in how can you not want to read that?
Oh, it's crazy good. Like, it's there's a lot of like wild things that just can't happen. They happen really quickly. So I think like by modern pace, you know, telling, you could say the story writing's a little bad, but it's still really good. It's still, I can't contradict myself. It's bad, but it's good. Take it with a grain of salt. Be able to take your time reading through it, and, you know, reading out the dialogue, or just skip through it and watch some really interesting and fun artwork. You'll have a great time with it.
Yeah, I mean, and while we're on the topic of Han Solo, like something else that I noticed, it was in issues 7 or 8, or maybe both. There's a lot of shirtless Han Solo, and it reminded me of that arc from the 2015 mainline where they're on like a farm, and Han Solo is like working for a drink and stuff.
Yeah, you know, Harrison Ford shirtless. It's a trope.
Yes, it is for sure. So that's just something that I found to be pretty interesting. That arc was really interesting with how it started with like a bantha hauling a dead cyborg, or Borg as they call him, and how there's like so much prejudice against the Borgs.
Yeah,
and I like how it sets up like the stuff with Valence later on.
It sets up that, it also sets up in like a later arc, like on the Wheel of Doom or whatever, giant casino sort of thing. They also make several references to like, you know, it's really weird how rebels treat droids like people and are like friends with their droids, and like that's like an era of prejudice they set up, is that droids are tools, not friends, sort of thing. So it's kind of like another, like, you know, you can tell that they're trying to talk about like social issues with that, like, you know, rejection of the outsider is bad, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you bring up another interesting. This one isn't in the notes, but I remember reading about it yesterday. You bring up another arc, the Wheel, which I believe is one of the.
It's right after like the it's like it issues like 17 to 20 or so.
Yeah, that was also an interesting arc, because that apparently the article that I was reading had compared it to like Las Vegas, but in space. It was in non-imperial controlled space, and it's just this gladiatorial arena, and all of our heroes are entered into it and have to fight each other. And get one of the notable things is that it was one of the biggest cliffhangers from one issue to the next is because, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go into spoilers here for a comic that's, you know, 40 years old. One of the issues appears to have Chewbacca kill Han Solo at the end. And that was, again, at this time when there's a huge delay, when you don't have social media, when you literally have the media that is in front of you, and you close the book and you don't know when you're going to get your next book, and all you know is it's going to be at least a month away. And that seems like a big deal.
And here's the even worse thing: they didn't even have the next movie out, or even trailers
Right,
confirmed
yeah.
that Han Solo was still in those movies.
Right. So as we know, all of our heroes are, when we read these books and comics, and we know that all of our heroes are going to be safe. You didn't know that back then, and for all you know, Chewbacca really did kill Han Solo. And it's just that's I keep going back to it. That's what I find so fascinating about this. And there's one other topic that I wrote down before I toss it to my co-host here to see if they have any other stories. With Star Wars issue 81, and I really wrote this down more because of the title. It was titled "The Jawas of Doom." And it's a tale involving a broke Han traveling to Tatooine with Leia, and they find themselves running into a very, very familiar foe. R2 is abducted by Jawas, and these Jawas stumble upon the regurgitated body of Boba Fett.
Boba
Fett, suffering from amnesia. So even back in 83, the writers knew that no Sarlacc could keep Boba Fett down, and Boba Fett was definitely going to get out of the Sarlacc. Like I said, the story is I'm interested to hear to read that story, because I see the title Jawas of Doom, and I'm like, okay, all right, you have my attention.
Exactly. I mean, they're comic book writers. They know a good design when they see it, and they're not about to throw something like that away.
Right. So did you guys? So those were a couple that I had written down. I'll pass it over to Emma and to Caleb to see if there were any additional topics or stories that you had written or that you had wrote, or if Emma, I know you said you only read the first few. If you wanted to maybe talk about how the comic was kind of, how it's, even though it portrayed A New Hope, it's obviously very different than the actual movie that we know and love.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, stylistically, the adaptation is not a one-to-one.
Right.
Where I would say like the more modern movie adaptations are definitely more of a one-to-one, mostly one-to-one. Luke, all the characters look different in some sort of way. The scenes, some of the starfighters were different. Some of the the setup for the big meeting scene in the base at Yavin 4. That scene was a bit different. Like they all come in on these like hover carts. They're all like riding on a hover cart, and we don't see that in the movie. I found it fun, to be honest, to read an adaptation that wasn't a one-to-one of the movie. Like, just because I honestly think that a lot of that is probably due to just the information that they were privy to before the movie. And so it was interesting, like the lightsabers were different colors, and that could be, just because of their time and like how it translates to digital media. Like, Darth Vader's lightsaber was yellow, and so is Obi-Wan Kenobi's. It definitely had like a pinkish hue sometimes. Sometimes it looked yellow.
Plus, they only had so many colors when they were printing, so...
Yeah.
True, yeah. I just, honestly, the style choices were more interesting to me than any of the story elements, I would say.
When I was thumbing through it, didn't like Luke call after like he sees Obi-Wan being slain by Darth Vader, he turns and yells at Darth Vader, "You dirty rat!" I'm like, oh boy. That
definitely said that to someone in this.
I think he said that to Vader, like, oh boy, that's some real grade school name calling there.
Right. For sure.
All right, Caleb, do you have any additional topics or stories that we haven't mentioned so far?
I like part of like the continuation of the showdown at Duel 3, like it pretty much bleeds straight into another story where our crew gets like and kind of split up and crash landed on a giant water planet, so to kind of do like the water world and pirate sort of thing. And that was like a really fun sort of thing. Plus it does nicely establish that Luke definitely does not know how to swim, and that's always like, kind of like a nice refreshing, like, oh boy, I don't know how to swim, guys. I've never seen this much water ever.
I was gonna say, you know what? At first I laughed, and then like like if you go back and watch this, you can kind of see me go through it in real time. Like, haha, of course. Why would he know? Or he doesn't know how to swim. Oh wait, There's no reason for him to know it.
There's not exactly a community pool on Tatooine.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, there's we're going to toss back to Trevor one more time because I couldn't have him be a part of this show without allowing him to ask us a question that we can discuss live. So, Emma, why don't you toss it back to Trevor one more time so he can ask us our last question of the night. So before I let you go, I wanted to know if there was anything that you'd like me to take back to the rest of the team. You know, if there's any discussion points or any thought-provoking questions that you might have for the rest of us to discuss all Cosmic Force, and then maybe, you know, have some interaction with those that are in the live chat as well.
Okay, so obviously all of you guys are coming to this from a position of not having read them. I'd be really interested to know how you think they hold up. Obviously, there's very little connective tissue between these and everything that came after from the 90s, Legends canon. There's very little that really syncs up. But were there any stories that you were surprised at the depth of the storytelling, or how strong the characters were? Or did you all kind of think of it as more throwaway? It'd be really interesting to see how someone connects to it 40 years down the line.
All right. Well, that's a great question, and I look forward. I'm going to save my answer for the live show as well, so that way we can all talk. But before I let you go, are there any other last comments that you want to make on this run or this book, or any titles or any specific storylines that you want to plug? Let's here's your chance to let the Cosmic Force audience into what Trevor finds most amazing about this book.
Okay, I'm going to hit you with a couple of issue numbers that I want everyone to do as homework if they so choose after this show. So issues 7 to 16 that we spoke about, go and get them. Issue 50, which is the Crimson Forever, that is the issue that actually had a Legends sequel released a couple of years ago as an issue 108.
Yes.
So that's worth checking out. Plip from the Who Gives is issue 56. Issue 70, Shantus of the Stars, has Leia doing karaoke and little Ewok type creatures that turn into massive Hulk type creatures when they hit puberty and get slightly turned on by Leia singing. And then issue 80, I've spoken about this on the Star Wars Archives before. It's a really, really serious story about trying to find a couple of rebel spies who are searching for the plans for the second Death Star, and 3PO falls in love. And it's heartbreaking. Anyone, write those numbers down, go and check those issues, and let us all know what you think.
Oh my gosh. I haven't had a chance to read all of them, but every single time I hear you or I research a story, I get very excited to read this. And I'm really looking forward to really dive it into this, because it's fascinating. I would love to see to experience these. So, well, Trevor, I appreciate you taking some time to talk with me, and I hope that we can get you on with the rest of the crew in a live session in the near future. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Happy to help.
All right, so that's a question of the night, and I think that's a question that we kind of wanted to. I didn't even give him any heads up on that, but I feel like that was kind of the question that we wanted to answer when we decided to do this show. And for me, I'll go first. It's sort of, does it hold up compared to today's standards? I would say no, but if you could look at this, because there's a lot of things that are different in the comics industry. Caleb had mentioned that a lot of the writing was shorter, and the stories were a little bit more self-contained, and I think that we've seen a pattern in comics now to be a little bit more serialized and have a instead of a monster of the week or a problem of the week or a month, that it's now an ongoing saga. And as we were talking about at the beginning of in our pre-show, a lot of the layouts, there's so many more words on a page. If I were to hold this up, there's probably 25 different thought bubbles on one page, and in comics nowadays, there might be 350 words in an entire book. So I think it really is it's an amazing time capsule into a real distinct era in comics. And if you look at it from that lens and you enjoy all the freedom and all the amazing creativity that goes into it, from that perspective, it absolutely holds up. So I am extremely excited to read more of this. I really encourage those of you who especially have a digital subscription to take some time and to read some of these, because I think you're going to be really entertained. I'm going to go to Caleb next to see what your perspective is.
Ditto. I mean, it's kind of similar. Yeah, there's some really great storytelling. I'm not necessarily the most art sort of for guy. I love it when I love stories. I love creativity. I like seeing when an author can have create things that are fun and interesting. In that case, it's amazing. If you're like a creative one, like you want to like ever playing like D&D campaigns or Star Wars role-playing game sort of things, this is a treasure trove. There's so many great ideas here that might be a little out of the normal sort of wheelhouse, but you can add on so many things. You want to have a pirate campaign? Go for it. You want to go to the gambling central of the world and have a giant, gladiatorial combat? They have established that. There's a lot of really great like moments here. So, you have to is the writing as good as the current series? I don't think so, but I think the stories and the creativity on display, I think it might be a little better. I think there's like some moments that are just
Absolutely.
better and they run through it a lot quicker. The pace, it's a lot wordier, but the pace is a lot quicker. So you can plow through these a little bit easier if you just kind of just skip the villain dialogue, just kind of get on to like the cool like establishing shots. There's a lot of fun to be had in this series. I really like it a lot. Emma, how about you close us out?
Yeah, so honestly, does it hold up story-wise? Probably not. Does it hold up style-wise? No. But if you read it with the idea that it was written over 40 years ago, and you walk into it with that mindset, you're going to have a fun time. And I mean, I wasn't around to read comics in this era, obviously, but, I can appreciate the style that it brings, the methods of storytelling that it brings, and, there are things in here to enjoy, even if it's not like your typical sort of comic book that you would read in 2021. And that's okay. Like, it's fun to appreciate the older stuff. I mean, we all appreciate the movie from 1977, so why can't we appreciate the series from 1977?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I like to visit this art style. I don't think that I could sit through all 107 issues and read it straightforward, because I think I would get a headache from the amount of words or seeing that amount of art, that length of art in that style. But I popping in every once in a while, reading a handful of stories, and then popping back out and looking at the different adaptations of the movies, that's something that you can't get. And it was written in a time that, you could do and say a lot more things that you could. There's a lot more criticism. There's a lot more negativity. There's a lot more things and things that you can't attempt to do because of the way that we are with social media. And it would just, it would not be received as well. And everything ages well. I think that also has a lot to do with it. And when you have a community like Youtini who looks for the positives and criticizes where and comments negatively where necessary, but really understands the positivity, I think that you will really appreciate this project. So, all right, final words from Emma about this book.
Yeah, that was very well said, Tyler. I agree with all of it. It was really fun to go back and read these with you guys, because I don't think I would have if we weren't talking about it on the show. And now I'm stuck and I want to read all of them. So, this is good. Sometimes you just need that little extra push to read something that you might not have in the first place. And I definitely appreciate it for what it is. And I'm glad to have had a chance to chat about it with you guys. And also thank you, Trevor, for answering
Yes.
those questions for us. That was really awesome. I know with, time zones, it was really difficult to get you live, but we were just so happy to have your knowledge in some capacity. So thanks again, Trev.
Absolutely. Caleb, last words before we close out?
I'm going to echo what Trev said, and you got to read issues. I think it's 7 through 16. That gets you everything you need to know about this series. It gives you a couple of good story arcs, some really great character moments. You get to read Jackson and Don Quixote. So read 7 through 16. It's on Marvel Unlimited. Get yourself a trial there and give that a try.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that said, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Cosmic Force. A special thank you to Trevor for offering his knowledge and time to join us today. And a special thank you to all of you joining us live. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, or right here on YouTube. And tune in every Wednesday at 8 o'clock to hear us live. And again, if you can't catch us live, that's okay. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube and watch all of our videos whenever you want to, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts on any platform that is available. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review on iTunes or any of those other platforms. It very much helps the other listeners find the show. And we always love hearing from you all. So please, if you like us, give us a review, and we do really appreciate you. Be sure to visit Youtini.com for reviews, articles, and news for the entire expanded universe. We also encourage you to join our Youtini Discord community by going to Youtini.com/Discord. If you'd like to help support the show, you can find us on Patreon.com/Youtini and start receiving exclusive perks starting at just $5 a month. A special thank you to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sanders on our Jedi High Council, as well as Kyle Hickman, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. All of you provide amazing support, just like the rest of our community. Thank you. You can tweet the show at Cosmic Force Show or at the host individually. I'm at Ty Rags. Emma is at Irma Jedi 26. Caleb is at Caleb Lamanek. Jacob is at Jacob Bosch. And Trevor is at Davey Todd. Until next week. Next week we have a fun show in store for you. We are doing another artist spotlight. And this time it'll be on Will Sliney. So make sure you guys, it'll be a fun show to watch live. Because there's going to be a lot of art that we're going to show off. So I encourage you to check us out live next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. But until then, may the Force be with you.